All right, let's start. Good afternoon, everybody. Very good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to the expert session of your course, Full Stack Development. Amit, it's an absolute pleasure and so good to see you. We have been talking on phone. First of all, thank you so much for the time and good to see you over here.
Thank you, Rohit. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, of course, I mean, good to see you in person.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, all my dear students, Amit, just to give you an idea, all these students are from third year and final year engineering, have that career aspiration, high aspirational value to get into a tier one company uh, and get that new age technical career, as we say, um, to begin with, right? And that's how they are being part of Skill Edge and this particular course on full stack development. Now, before we start, just give me 1 minute. I'm going to share one screen, and it's my absolute honor to introduce Amit sir to all of you. Just give me 1 minute. All right. Okay, so here we are in today's session, and before I give the platform to Amit sir, um, it's my absolute honor and pleasure to invite and introduce Amit Pandey sir to all of you. Uh, he is the founder and the CEO of Synclovis. It's one of the top rated, I would say, IT product development, mobile as well as web app company in Bangalore. He has more than 20 years plus experience in IT. We call it tech experience from consulting to product development. He's a Symbiosis International University student way back, maybe 20 years earlier. So it's a journey which Amit sir has traveled from being it's like an aspirational view from a programmer to a CEO of a top-rated company. So here we are today to learn from him, to learn from his experience. And the interesting part is Amit sir is going to talk about the things that you already have learned. For example, web architecture. You have 4 hours of session. You have also learned Agile. Sir is going to talk about how Agile works in an industry so you can correlate. And definitely the mindset which is required as a full stack developer. Sir has also seen the syllabus जो हम लोग कर रहे हैं, उस पे भी सर बात करेंगे. And yes, he has his unique style of presentation where he's going to interact and ask a lot of questions to you all. Just to let you know, all the students, आपका interaction sir के साथ is being monitored, which means will be a part of your evaluation. So it's not only so Amit sir is not aware of this, by the way. So for him, it's also for the first time he's listening that your all interaction will be observed. It's a part of your course. You can understand. Yes, it's an expert session, but ability to ask questions, ability to respond, these are very important attributes that I believe as a fresher is being valued a lot in tier one companies. In fact, in all the companies, if I have to say. So over to you, Amit. Thank you so much once again. It's an absolute pleasure seeing you, talking to you, and the platform is yours. I'm here. I may close the video for some time, but over to you.
Thank you so much, Rohit. Guys, good afternoon to you, all of you. And it's a Saturday afternoon. So good that you guys are kind of like here to, basically interact with me. I would say, that's what I said to Rohit, that I would want to interact with you guys because I think if it is interactive, then it will not look like I'm giving a lecture. So lecture is something which you already have been hearing a lot. So I don't want to give lecture. So if some of you, if it is appropriate for you, you can please switch on your videos so that we can interact and we can get to know each other a little bit. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. If you all are, if you all can start your video also, that will be great.
Yeah, wherever you are, be comfortable. It doesn't matter where you are. Just stay comfortable. Switch on your video so that we can know each other by face. If we know each other by face, then the interaction becomes more connected. So just to give you a little background so that you connect with me in a more better way. So basically, I'm a native of UP. There's a place called Ayodhya, which you all must be aware of. So I was born there, and then I was brought up in I like until my primary education. I did it in a place called Bhilai. That's now earlier it was in MP, and now it is in Chhattisgarh. And after that, I moved to Mumbai. So I stayed then throughout, in Mumbai. In between, I went for my post graduation to Symbiosis Pune also, and then uh, after working in Mumbai and Pune, for around 9, 10 years, I came to Bangalore, and it's almost 11, 12 years I'm here in Bangalore. So just to giving, just trying to give you, the different places from where I have stayed and where I have spent. So any of you guys are able to relate where, like any of you guys are from those places where I have come from?
Guys, you can also put your answers in the chat box. So it's if you are not able to, if you are not unmuting yourself, but you can also put your thoughts in the chat box.
Yeah.
And please interact. I told you that's very important. Overall, it's very important. But so anybody from those places where sir mentioned,
Anybody is from right now from Bangalore? No? Pune? So Akshay is from Bangalore? Akshay?
Akash, I think Akash is from.
Akash, okay. Akash, you're from Bangalore, okay. Okay. Priti Patil from Pune. Great. Anybody from Mumbai? Anybody from Mumbai? Mumbai, which place? You can mention the place also. Where exactly? Kalyan. Okay. Great. I used to stay in Lalbagh in Mumbai. So that is where I have spent, a lot of my childhood. Anybody from Chhattisgarh, MP? Kalyan, Vasai, Pune. Pune, you can mention the place also. Where in Pune exactly? So I see Paras and Richa, uh, two of you guys online. Great to see you online, Paras and Richa. Uh, rest of you also, if you can switch on your video, that will be awesome.
Guys, also mention the place from where are you in Pune. If many of you can start your video, that will be really great.
Yeah. Stay comfortable. It's going to be very casual, and like I'll. It's not an interview or something like that. The whole point is that if you are comfortable, then you can ask more questions. Great. So great. So uh, I mean, so most of you are from Mumbai or Pune. That's great. So, guys, the most important thing is that as you are going through this, full stack course, so this is something which is very much in demand in across the industry. So, I think first of all, I mean, it's a great choice that you guys have made, and I think you are in the first and second month, first month of the course, right now, and you have already gone through this Linux CLI source code versioning Git, the architecture concept of how web app works, then software development, agile and scrum
Amit,
method.
your voice is slightly on a lower side. If you can.
Just a second. Is it better?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll try to speak a little louder. Okay. So I see that there are command line, in Linux, then source code versioning Git, then architectural concept of how a web application works, software development fundamental, agile and scrum methodology, project development planning, data structures, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, Bootstrap. So these are all like core fundamentals which you're covering. The most important thing, if I have to talk about in the industry is like nowadays people are interested in looking at if you have a Git repository in your CV, which they can click and go and see what kind of source code, what kind of code you have written. So this is super important, and that's getting covered in the first month itself. So that will give you a base to kind of like start putting your source code, whatever code you're writing out there. And whenever you apply, it will be out there to the world to see what kind of source code you have written. So that's really great thing. Uh, Maybe a few of you can share, if you have uh, if you have any doubt or any questions regarding, how this whole thing works. Anything, any doubt, any questions you have? Or maybe let me put it this way. Uh, can one person tell me why we use Git?
First of all, is Amit sir audible to all of you? Can I get a yes on the chat box?
Am I audible to all of you?
Loud and clear, huh?
Okay, fantastic.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So sir has asked a question. Can you please answer?
So why Git? I mean, where we use Git? It helps us.
It can be used for project management. For example, if 4 or 5 persons are working on a project, on a single project, then they can code in their collaboration.
Fantastic. So especially nowadays, when everyone is working from their homes, especially in software world, Git is like a savior, because you can simply check in your code, check out, and see what is the latest. So if you know this tool, like you are that's a first step where you are getting industry ready actually. So it's basically collaboration. It helps you to basically manage version of your source code, number one. And number two is like multiple people can work on the same source code. Okay, so that's the most important thing. Then coming to the Linux command line.
Linux they have not done, Amit.
Not done.
Yeah. So web architecture, source code versioning, and your agile.
Okay.
So these three and Python they have just started.
Okay. Got it. So basically, again, like command line Linux, I'm sure you guys would have used, if not Linux, you would have used Windows command prompt. Okay, so it's very similar. The command line Linux is very similar to Windows. Okay, but what happens is like nowadays, like Python. Okay, let's take Python, or let's take what you say, Node.js or Spring Boot. A lot of this backend technology, code base, people prefer to use Linux machines. So if you know Linux command line, it becomes very handy for you to do certain things, automate certain things, which generally will not be so handy. Okay, and Linux is a awesome platform, awesome operating system if you're considering, like coding, especially on all these open source technologies. So coming to the web architecture, uh, so web architecture, I just want to understand, like, if you can, somebody can kind of like tell me what is web architecture, what you have understood, one or two of you, then maybe I can elaborate on that. Just don't be afraid. Just feel free, whatever you know, even if it is wrong, that's fine. Richa, can you tell what you have basically like what is your understanding on web architecture?
So, on the basis of whatever we have studied till now, I have understood that there is a client server and there is a server on the back end. When someone is trying to call a particular page or a particular IP address. So it is like calling the page from the backend server. So there are technically there are two servers. One is on the client side and one is on the backend side. So they basically interact, and a page is loaded on the client side. So
Okay.
this
Okay.
is
Got it. Anybody else wants to give it a try? Paras,
Yes, sir.
can you?
Go ahead,
Sir,
Paras.
according to me, in a web architecture, a request is given from the user side to the server of the company, or let's say a website, and according to the request given by the user, the server gives the response. So
Right.
basically, it's request and response.
Great. And somebody, Anuj Gupta, is writing interaction between application, middleware, and the database. Ensure multiple application work together. Pratiksha, it helps to work together. Conceptual structure of internet. Okay. So, so just to kind of like simplify, what happens is like, let's take an example of one of the web application which you use. Okay. Uh, let's talk about Google, right? That is one of the application. It's a web application actually that you use almost a number of time every day. So what happens? You see a web application. You type google.com. The moment you type google.com, what happens? A page gets rendered on your screen in your browser. So first thing is that your web application runs in the web browser. Number one thing. So which are the web browsers you have? Chrome, Safari is for Mac, and then which are
Microsoft
other
Edge,
Microsoft
Firefox.
Edge, Firefox? Which are the other ones you know? So typically, whatever three, four, Opera, fantastic. So these are the web browsers. So web browsers work as a container wherein your web application runs. So say for example, you type google.com. Now when you type google.com and enter, what happens?
It directs to that page of Google.
It,
The
it,
web browser directs to that page
yeah. So
on the
basically,
link.
So basically, what happens is like that google.com, okay, is linked to a particular IP address, okay, and that IP address basically, what happens is that IP address is the place where your server is hosted. So it will say that this particular, say for example, Firefox browser from so and so location has basically sent this request on this
Amit, you
IP.
have to speak a bit louder. It's coming very. You have to speak a bit louder.
Okay, okay. Just a second, guys. Am I audible now?
Ah.
Okay. So as I was saying that the moment you put that google.com and enter, okay, and if internet is available in your computer or your mobile, it will send a request to that particular IP. So every site that you see, that's mapped with the IP. Okay, and that IP basically is the place where exactly your application is hosted. So that's that application which is hosted, that's called as a server side application. Now that server side application will basically understand the request, okay, and then accordingly send a response back. So response back that you get is a HTML web page. That's a google.com that you see, okay, and in that then you have that search bar and all that. Now what you do is like in search bar you enter some data, and then again what you do is like you enter. Now again when you enter, what happens is again that web page containing that request, okay, is sent back to the server, that this particular IP, this particular client browser has asked this, has this request. It will check the request and respond back with a new set of data. Easy. So that's how basically, the typical, so the one which you see on the browser, that is your client side page. Okay. The one which you don't see is the server side of it. All the intelligent processing, that connecting with the database and finding out, say for example, if you type some, a word and that search result. So all that intelligent processing happens where? In the server. Now, what is the server? How server works basically is that the moment your request goes to the server, okay, server will take that request and process it and see, that what kind of request it is. It is, say for example, you are looking for Sachin Tendulkar. Okay, so it will pass that query to the database. Okay, and database will fetch some kind of a result. Okay, that it will pack it in a response format. Okay, response has a particular format. Okay, and in that format it will return back. And the moment it is written back, it gets displayed on your client side. Clear? So typically what is involved? Your client side application is involved, where you see that HTML pages, HTML and JavaScript. Okay, and then the request goes from your client side application to the server side application through something called as web services. Web services, or nowadays people also call it as a APIs. Okay, and then it gets processed, the request gets processed where? By the server. Okay, in server, what are the things which are involved? Your server code will be involved, your database will be involved, where the data exists. So your server code will process the request, understand, execute the query, get the data, form a request packet and send it back. This is how typically the web works. Now all this request and response is happening through what? There is something called as HTTP. Have you seen that? So that is a protocol. That is a protocol that's getting used. That's basically used to kind of like to place a request and get a response. Now, if it is HTTPS, what does it mean? So there are two things you may see: HTTP and HTTPS. Any idea?
HTTP is the older version and HTTPS is the newest. Means okay. HTTP with more security.
S stands for security, simple. Okay, S stands for security. So if any request which is going through HTTP, okay, and if it is not secure, what happens is like it can be kind of like it can be tracked in between. So that's why nowadays most of the applications, almost every application uses HTTPS, so that the moment request basically packet is transferred over HTTP protocol, it is going through a secure layer. Easy so far? Yeah, Mansi, you're right. HTTP is unsecured and HTTPS is secured. But when you talk about further, a little one step down, what is secured, unsecured? So that's where the security aspect comes into picture. That the moment the data travels, the data packet that travels from, your computer to the server, okay, if I'm in the same network, I can sniff that data and I can understand that what kind of request packet is traveling, to and fro into your computer. But if it is HTTPS, then it's encrypted, and though I will be able to still sniff the data packets, but I will not be able to understand what's there inside it. So that's where it becomes secure. So now coming to the client side of it. Client side, whatever you see, it's all HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Anybody, what is basically difference between HTML and JavaScript? and CSS? This is one of my favorite questions, which I ask, to a lot of people in the interviews.
You're getting a chance to hear real-time interview questions also. So I think it's a good opportunity to maybe in a way give answers, and who knows, Amit sir gets impressed if you know, obviously. You can try. Nothing right. Nothing. You can always try. There is no fear of right
can
or
I
wrong.
answer?
Yeah. Go ahead.
First,
All three are used for the front end side, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Basically, HTML is used for the front end side scripting. For example, to show the page, let's say a web page. So for a web page, HTML can be used for that type of scripting, and CSS is used for increasing the look and feel for in a better way. For example, the if we touch to the text which is shown on the web page, then it changes the color. And then JavaScript is used for basically the functioning of that web page.
and Paras, can you tell me which are the, like say for example, if you load a page, which are the events which the JavaScript events that gets triggered?
Can you pardon, sir?
If you load a page, web page, right? Which are the events that JavaScript trigger? So JavaScript basically triggers. Any idea about that?
No, sir.
Action.
Which are the events that gets triggered? Which are the functions that gets triggered?
Button, like if you click a button, the
No, if you
action
don't click a
will be
button, if you simply have a JavaScript, right? So if you have a simple JavaScript, then what are the functions that will get called? So I'll tell you, okay, no problem. So say for example, like whatever you see, red, yellow, button, bullets, that text box, label, everything is HTML. Okay, where you use CSS basically is say for example, it's basically the full form of CSS is cascaded style sheet. Okay, so it helps you to create a format basically. So say for example, if you are writing a header, okay, header one, header one, header one, header one, like that. Okay, so if you create as CSS for that, you don't need to repeat the same code again and again. So you
Yes.
have defined the CSS into the CSS file, okay, and simply you use that, and you don't need to rewrite the whole code. So that's where your lines of code gets reduced, when your HTML lines of code gets reduced by using CSS. Okay, and of course, I mean, CSS has become super powerful now. You can add a lot of animations and other stuff into it. Okay, but the core thing is, it's basically to create a complete styling. First you create the complete styling, and then whichever style you want to use in your HTML, you can simply use it. You don't need to rewrite the whole style again and again. That's a core difference between HTML and CSS. Now what happens is, like JavaScript, what happens is, why I'm touching this particular thing, because this is again important. A lot of people know what is JavaScript, but they don't know what are the functions or events that gets called. So what happens is, like when you run a particular this thing, what you say, when you open a browser, google.com, so what is that event that gets called? Any idea? JS helps us to create interactive web pages. Event listeners, yes. Yes, Kirti, you're right. So if you basically, I'll share with Rohit after this. So if you simply write that, catch that, you will know that the moment you click and open the browser, okay, click then open that particular web page, okay, it will trigger one event of the JavaScript, then second event, third event, page load event. Have you heard of page load event? button click event, when a button click happens. Okay, so all this, basically there are several such events are there, which JavaScript basically, helps you to kind of like capture. And all this, that's the core job of the JavaScript that is used on the on your client side or on your front end. People also call it front end. Okay. So what happens is like, let me give you an example. Sometimes, you are basically trying to register for a website, and in the registration page, you are supposed to enter, your name, date of birth, email ID, and all that, right? Now, what happens is if you write something like amit@stcloses.com, it will accept it. If I write simply Amit, what it will show? It will show an error.
Yeah.
Because it will say that, this email ID is not correct.
Invalid.
But like what basically it captures is like, it captures that, alphabet, some alphabet or number combination, then there has to be @ and then there has to be some kind of a domain name, and then dot, and then something. So that format, and this format typically gets written into what? JavaScript. So JavaScript will also validate, also works on for client side validation. Like you have a client side page, okay? In that, user will input some data, okay? Whether that data is basically valid data or not, that programming of validation of data you can do using client side JavaScript. Yeah. So that is all about your client side. HTML, whatever look and feel you see, okay, that is all HTML. CSS, the complete style that gets defined for your HTML is written into the CSS. Best practice, every HTML, whatever HTML page you write should have a CSS. And then JavaScript for capturing the events, okay, and validating the user inputs. So all browser input, all browser related events, when your browser starts, okay, when you try to close it, or when you try to, like refresh, reload, there are several JavaScript events which you can kind of like, understand. And if you understand, if you know all these JavaScript events, you can literally kind of like play with it.
So what was the answer of that question then you asked earlier?
Which
Then
one?
when you load a web page, then which event is of JavaScript is done?
I'll tell you, even I don't remember because I stopped coding.
Okay.
Let me tell you that JavaScript events, if you simply type, so I'll tell you the exact JavaScript events that gets triggered.
While Amit sir is telling you the answer, there is one learning from what has happened right now. If you all observe very carefully, and this is industry at its best. When you don't know an answer, what is the immediate answer you get, or what you should answer is that I don't know. You imagine the CEO of a company who is telling you something, right? If you don't know, you don't know, and there is no harm in accepting that. हम बहुत बार इंटरव्यू में, अगर आपने ऑब्जर्व किया होगा या आपको ये समझ में आता होगा, बहुत बार इंटरव्यू में हमें नहीं आता है ना, हम उसको गोल गोल घुमाने की कोशिश करते हैं, विच इज नॉट द राइट अप्रोच. मैं इस पूरे डायलॉग को जब सुन भी रहा था, इससे आपकी एक लर्निंग है सब लोगों की, और बहुत मेजर लर्निंग है. मेनी टाइम्स, not many times, all the time, being transparent in an interview will fetch you that job rather than moving around that answer. Amit, thank you so much for bringing that out in front of everybody, because your technical expertise anyway we are all aware of, but these small things, if can go to students, it can really have a bigger impact. So thank you so much. I couldn't stop myself but to barge in and share this thought with everybody.
I'll share the, like what I'll do is I'll share a simple, this event. There is a very simple, event listener code which you can write. Okay. And you can simply, what you can say is like, play with it by kind of like loading it. So the moment you open that, click on that, web page and open it, it will tell you this event has called, this event has called, this event has called. So when you know that event one, first is this event that gets called event one, event two, event three, event four, event five, and event six. So what happens, you can basically accordingly do certain functions based on those events. Like if you know that button click pay, you are supposed to do validation. Okay. So then you will write your validation code into that button click, whatever is there.
function होगा वो.
Yeah. Or if you know a little better programming, what you will do is like you will create a function.
Yes.
Okay, which will have, all the validation ka logic. Okay. And wherever you want to do validation, you will simply call that function. Yeah. So so the whole point is that, like you guys can also Google it and see how this JavaScript event gets loaded. I will also share it with Rohit, which Rohit can share it with you guys.
Sure,
So,
definitely.
sir, we can say that HTML is used for creating a static web page, and as you said, for CSS can be used so that to deduct the amount of code. For example, if we have to update the same thing many times, so we can use the CSS for that HTML, and JavaScript can be used for functioning of the web page. For example, if we do something on the web page, for that to create a logic for that, we can use JavaScript for that on
Absolutely.
server side. Sorry,
Absolutely.
client side scripting, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So moving ahead, like coming to the from client side, I think client side you guys are pretty clear. Anybody is not clear about a client side? So client side, what are the three things which you have? Your HTML, CSS, and your JavaScript.
JavaScript. Yes.
HTML, CSS completely look and feel. Okay. And JavaScript is for what? All the event handling. Okay. Event handling, or basically what you can say is further, if I have to simplify, is that like if you do button click, if you refresh your page, or if you basically go back, from this state to other state in the page. So every event that is happening in your browser in that application can be captured, and all that you can do through what? JavaScript.
JavaScript.
Now coming to the, this is on the client side. On the backend side, now backend side, what are the key things which are involved is your server side programming. Server side programming, generally you will use, Django, Python, or Node.js, or PHP, or Spring Boot, or anything like that. And it will also have basically what? The database. Okay. Now what will happen is like generally you will write your web services using this server side programming languages. Okay. Which where you will define what is the request, what is the response, and what is the error. If, say for example, request is there and there is some problem with the request or that request, so what should be the, error that should be passed. So request, response, error, these are the typical standard three things that kind of like, the communication happens between the server side and the client side. And of course then you have got your database and the server side, which interacts using some kind of a database connectivity, that if you have not learned, you will learn, as you progress further into the course. Now what happens is like again, as I said, on the server side, on the client side, how you have CSS, right? That where you use basically styling so that your HTML code is reduced. Okay. Similarly, what happens on the server side also, you need to use best practices so that you can write minimal code and get maximum output. Okay. And that's where few things which comes handy is like, one is like, it's not like, that from day one you will start writing, a very optimal code. It requires some kind of experience. But if you have, the best thing, what I always tell to a lot of people is that if you are writing a code, okay, show it to your friend, ask them to review and give feedback, that where I can improve. Now, there is nothing like, the whole point is why you are doing this is so that you can learn where I'm making mistakes. Okay. And that person who is doing your review, that person will also get to learn. Because maybe you have written a particular code in a particular way, and if he does a proper review, intentionally, genuine review, the person will get a very good input and insight and a lot of learning. So try within among your this team itself, that write code, okay, and then ask people to review and give feedback. The same code you may write possibly in say 20 lines, but there is someone who has who can write the same code in possibly like 5 lines or maybe 2 lines, or if they know some functions which already exist, they may write it in 1 line itself. So that's where the peer review, okay, becomes very helpful in understanding and getting feedback from your friends. And second is the person who is doing peer review, they also get to learn if they find that you have written something in a different way altogether. Okay, so be absolutely open. Okay, don't see how you can support them, how you can motivate each other, because sometimes some people will have a knack of coding, they may do a better coding, some people may not be, but the whole point is that you should start doing the coding. The moment you start doing the coding, okay, and you don't not give up, and automatically after 1, 2 or 3, 4 tries, you will start coding, and within a week or 2 weeks you will see that you are fluent coder. Now, coder to a developer, that's a different journey. Okay, that's a continuous improvement that you need to get into it, and the continuous improvement can happen by learning. Okay, by getting feedback from people from your same batch or people who are in industry. Okay, and basically what you say is this learning, getting feedback, and sharing with more and more people. That's the most important thing. Which language mostly used in backend of development? So backend development, there are multiple technologies. Like each of technologies has its own pros and cons. Okay, so if I talk about enterprise side of it, so earlier there were like people. I'm talking about maybe 10 years back. 10 years back, two things were highly used. One is .NET, and one is like this enterprise Java. Okay, these are the two technologies that were heavily used. But over the period of time, what has happened in
Amit, a bit closer to your mic, a bit closer. Yeah.
But what has happened in like last 10 or 12 years, there are a lot of new technologies that have come that are open source. Like if you know Facebook, if you know Uber, and a lot of similar companies, they are heavily using Node.js. They're heavily using a Spring Boot. They have heavily using Django Python. So depending upon what is the need, they are basically choosing the backend technology. Each of the backend technology have its own pros and cons. So depending upon what kind of application they are developing, they use that backend technology. Yeah. Any other doubts or questions?
Sir, can you highlight about JavaScript libraries like React.js, React.js, AngularJS?
So they basically, see, your core is JavaScript, okay? Your core is JavaScript. Now, when you talk about AngularJS, Angular is basically a framework. Your React.js is another, another library. Then there is something called as Vue.js. So if you search, there are several different variants of this JavaScript libraries which have come. Now, what is the main difference between plain JavaScript versus these? Is like people have created a lot of classes, like how in CSS you use style sheet, right? So similarly, people have created a lot of classes which if you write in core JavaScript, you will possibly end up writing 1,000 line of code. But if you use Angular JS or React JS, you can simply call that function and get that job done. So that's the difference. But again, I mean, it depends upon people to people about. Uh, but previously, I mean, everyone used to use JavaScript heavily. Okay, but nowadays people are preferring a lot Angular JS and React JS.
So I had a question.
Yeah.
So is it true that there is another JavaScript library called Ember.js? So it is used for high enterprise projects, like heavy projects. So is there any kind of differentiation that a fresher will have to work on this kind of JavaScript library as compared to someone who's experienced? He's going to do the project on a different library. So is there something?
See, that is something which you will have to mentally be prepared with. Okay, whether it is embed.js, AngularJS, or React.js. The whole point is if you know the language, the basic language, the language is JavaScript. Okay, so if you know the language, then it's just a matter of understanding, what is the framework or what is the library structure which these platforms have, and and getting your job done. So it's nothing like maybe like say for example you are working on AngularJS and suddenly you have to shift to React.js. Maybe it will take a day or two for you to understand what is how to write the code in React.js, because the language is going to be same. So you don't have to learn new syntax or something. The only thing is the class structure, the functions that gets called may be different in React.js versus AngularJS. That's the only difference. So you have to just, I mean, you have to just kind of like mentally do a little shift that yes, I can do this, and learn it quickly and get it done. I mean, I mean, to further simplify that, like if you talk about various computer science languages, right? So if you see the other than syntax, okay, most of the things are pretty much same, like if else, your do while, okay, your and your variable naming convention and all that. Most of the computer languages are same. Only what you basically learn is the syntax is changing. If it is object oriented language, then there will be a class structure and all that. If it is not a if it is a procedural language, then it will not have any classes. So you have to just basically fundamentally understand that that only syntax is getting changed. So if you want to be a computer science expert, then you have to basically just take it as just another language, nothing else. There's nothing to worry about it. There's nothing to worry about it. There is nothing to fear about it. The only thing is you have to just learn. Mindset hona chahiye. That's it. I mean, another important point I have seen, there are a lot of people who get outdated because they basically get kind of like they are so attached to a particular technology that they don't want to learn new thing, and they say that I am specialist in Java, or somebody will say I am specialist in .NET, or somebody will say I'm specialist in this that. So okay, fine, you can be specialist in this that and all that, but you should also have ability to switch. Like I'll tell you uh, one of the place in last 15 years which I have seen, like there were a lot of Flash developers. Flash, I don't know, you guys may not have even heard of. Okay, so a lot of Flash developers were there. suddenly what happened with HTML5 and CSS, Flash developers were wiped off. Now the only option which Flash developers had is to learn new technology and kind of like get into that, or otherwise, lose the job. So all the Flash developers who were able to learn HTML, CSS, or any other technology, they are thriving. Who were not, they lost their jobs. And the difference is what? Only the syntax and only the mindset that I can do it simple. Any other things? Any other questions?
Amit, if you can talk a bit about Agile.
Yeah, sure. So, let me, talk a little bit about Agile, about how we follow exactly. So what happens is any project that you work on, whether small, big, or anything like that. So typically in companies, what will happen is like when you're working on a project, a lot of times it will happen that you will have a team where, more than, 2, 3, 4 people are involved. So it's very important that you follow a particular way or a discipline to kind of like ensure that the whole project gets executed smoothly. So agile practice is something which helps to kind of like run the project in a very a very nice way, and ensure that everything is tracked and tracked. Like say for example, there is something called as a so typically if you just, I mean, to give you I'll try to map your course structure. All of you have seen your course structure, right? If you see your course structure, there you will see that just a second, let me open it. So there you will see that month 1 or 2, month 1 to 2, you have very clearly written that basic use of Linux. Okay, basic use of Linux CLI, then jQuery, JavaScript, Bootstrap. Then month 3 and 4, it is pretty well defined. 5, 6. Now, if you see, if I ask you that, can you jump from, why can't we start month 5, 6, in the month first itself? So there is a particular way in which it has been kind of like, structured. That if you know this, then only you can know this. So there is some dependency. Like month 3, 4, whatever is there, if you know month 1 and 2, then it will help you to possibly relate month 3 and 4 in a better way. So it is a sequential. Like if you, in maths also, if you have to do addition, subtraction, and then equations, and then further kind of like higher mathematics, so you should start from A, B, C, D, like that, 1, 2, 3, and like that, right? So similarly in Agile also, the whole project, people who are experts, they identify that this is the whole project requirement. Okay, and this particular part of the project has to be done first, this particular part of the project has to be done second, and this particular part of the project has to be done third. Yeah, and then that project, that first part is broken into like multiple parts. Okay, that whole, that those things are called project backlogs. Okay, and what happens week on week, they will say, boss, okay, I'm going to start the sprint 1. Now sprint 1, we are going to do these 5 things. Okay, and like say for example, Paras is going to do this. Okay, and then Mukul is going to do this, Richa is going to do this, Kirti is going to do this. Okay, and then we start working on it. And to ensure that everything is tracked, what we do is we will have every day morning mein 10 or 15 minutes ka meeting, wherein we will discuss what am I going to do. Okay, and am I having any issues with that? Okay, and when I am going to complete that. Okay, and that's the only thing which possibly like we are supposed to discuss. Sometime people try to discuss again, but there is someone called as a scrum master. Scrum master's job is to make sure that people stick to the point. What are you supposed to do today? Okay, are you facing any challenges? When do you think you will complete this? Okay, and then after discussing this, people get back to their work and they start working on it. Okay, and if in between, like say somebody has some problem, there are some rules, thumb rules which we follow, that if you are working on something and you are getting stuck because of any problem, you should immediately touch base with your Scrum Master and tell, this is a problem I am facing and I am stuck. And the thumb rule is that you should not kind of like waste, if you are stuck on anything for more than half an hour, you should get in touch with your Scrum Master or your lead. Yeah. And that helps us to make sure that people are not sitting on an issue which they are stuck. Because maybe I am stuck. If I ask someone, okay, they will help me and I can overcome that issue quickly. Yeah. So that's basically the how the typical day works. And evening again, we kind of like at the end of the day again we have 10-15 minute scrum, that what you did, what you said in the morning, is that complete? No. So where you are stuck? I'm stuck here. Okay, I completed that. Somebody will say I completed that task and I took this. Okay, and I will complete that by tomorrow afternoon. So what happens? Everyone knows what is going on. Okay, and then like say for example a sprint, the whole chunk of work which is supposed to be done 2 weeks, that gets over in 2 weeks. So there will be sprint review meeting wherein we will review that, what kind of work we have done, whatever we have planned, are we able to do it or not. Okay, in between also, in like say for example if it is a 2 week sprint, in between, like after 1 week also it will get reviewed, that are we on track or we off track. So that helps us to understand when to increase the speed of the sprint, when to we will also know that are we kind of like going too slow, or if we are going very fast or we are going very slow, what is the reason for it. So if you know what is the reason for going slow, maybe you can act on it and you can correct that, and your sprint can come back on track. And at the end of the sprint, then there is a sprint review meeting where other people, they are given demo that this is what is being done. Now you can take some time and give us feedback. So sometimes not, almost every time it happens that like you have, like say for example 10 or 15 items in the backlog. Okay, there will be some spillover. Sometimes you may be able to kind of like do everything whatever is planned. Sometimes you may be able to do you may not be able to do all the things, and there may be some few things which may not complete. So those things are pushed to the next sprint. So this is how a typical sprint works. So and then there are sprint review meetings which happens, overall project review meetings. And in this also, then in this whole structure, one thing is very clearly understood is that are we building the things in a proper order. Like if you are trying to construct a building, layman example, okay, first thing you should build is foundation of the building. Even before foundation, what is supposed to be done?
Planning.
Your planning has to be done. Your blueprint of the building has to be ready. You would have seen that a lot of buildings or apartments, this gets constructed, their blueprint is ready. Building is not even like the foundation has been laid out, but you will see that this is going to be 10-story building, and this is going to be 2 BHK, 3 BHK, or 5 BHK, right? So similarly, your planning has to be really solid. So you should know what you are exactly building in software also. So your design of the product has to be ready. If your design of the product is not ready, then there is a high possibility that you will get into a lot of rework. But the foundation डालने के बाद, you will realize that boss, this foundation which I have created is only for 2-story, but I want to create 100-story building. So then what happens? Everything's scrapped and there's a lot of rework. So you should understand very clearly that what am I going to build? What is going to be the design? So if you are clear with that, then what happens is, then you can have a successful agile implementation, and you can track and you can ensure that your project gets done on time or before time.
So can you tell us about the story points?
See, story points basically are a way to kind of like, track the different use cases which gets implemented into the project.
Okay.
Okay. So say for example, registration process. So registration process will have, some story points. So like say for example, enter your first name, enter your last name, then, enter your email address. So when you're writing story points, what happens is that you will understand that, what is the scope of that story point, and based on that story point, the developer will be able to decide and tell you that I will take this much time to develop this.
Okay.
And one other good point is that you will also very clearly know that, say for example, if I have not mentioned that email validation has to be there, and it's not covered in the story point, and the product manager comes later on and says that email id related stuff is not there in registration, I want to add it, so that's additional stuff.
Yeah.
So that's where story point becomes handy. It's best way to kind of like, uh, make sure that your estimation is right. If you don't write story points, then what will happen is possibly you will end up in doing wrong estimations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sir, who decide the story points, developer or Scrum Master?
See, it is basically job of the product manager, okay, or the Scrum Master or the team. The whole team is responsible for that. So what happens is, like, say for example, a particular module has to be developed. That's broken down into some kind of a story points and all that. So people will sit and review, brainstorm, okay, and they will review whether this whatever story points are written are kind of like appropriate or not. Is there anything which is missing? If there is anything missing, that can be added. So, but the moment they get into the sprint, okay, the moment they get into the sprint, they have to make sure that their estimation is right. Sometimes it happens that, like we get into the development, and somewhere in the mid, as the developer is coding, he realizes that uh, this is there, but if this is there, then there is a couple of more things that needs to come. Okay, now those things everyone missed. So then that has to be highlighted, and then it has to be discussed, and that those things which were missed, that gets covered in the next sprint based on the priority. And very important thing is like priority. So people always, try to see what is priority. What is most important, that gets developed first. So the heart of the system gets developed first. Like I was giving an example of building, okay, so designing and all that, but when you are developing, when you basically creating a building, the foundation is the heart of the building, right? So that gets done first. So similarly in software also, you have to ensure that the heart, the most complex, the critical part of the system gets developed first. That will ensure that, because all other things, the things which are not so important or not so complex, can be easily done. But if you tackle the complex things first, what happens is that you get enough time in your planning to kind of like, complete other things. So say for example, if there is one complex module, okay, and that you have planned to do first, and you thought that it will get over in 2 weeks, but because of complexity it gets extended to 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and your whole project duration is like 12 weeks. Okay, still you will have around 8 additional weeks where you can cover all other non-complex items. Yeah. Any other questions?
So I wanted to ask that if suppose the task is means the estimated task is the time is elongated, so does the estimation of story point also gets increased? Like if they had planned it as 2 story points, does it increase to 5 if the task duration increases?
It happens. It's a very human thing that, you estimate, and then as you start coding, it gets kind of like, extended. But what happens is like, you give the first estimate that I'll do this in 8 hours, okay, and it gets extended to 12 hours or 16 hours. Okay, so you will enter that, this task was estimated ideally for 8 hours, but it took 16 hours or 20 hours. Now you will also, when you basically, you yourself, when you introspect, you will realize that there were certain things that you didn't consider while estimating, because of which, that additional extension happens. So that helps you to become a better developer in estimating the work. Okay, and also basically, what happens is like, you also get better in, the most important thing is understanding the requirement, because if you have to estimate it properly, you have to understand the requirement properly. So if you understand the requirement properly, in detail, in deep, then you will give most likely, almost very close estimations. But don't.
Sir, I have one
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Why only we use agile? Why can't we use spiral or RAD model?
See, again, like, it's not written on the stone that you use agile, you cannot use spiral or RAD model or any other model. It typically depends upon what kind of project you are executing. Okay, it typically depends upon, the product manager and, the scrum master, or, whoever are the key people, about what kind of model they want to, kind of like follow. The best thing about agile is that, there is always kind of a communication happening between all the stakeholders, whereas a lot of other models, there, one of the key thing that misses is that communication is not happening here. Like, morning you are communicating, evening you are communicating, any problem you are getting stuck there, you are communicating. So there is always communication happening, and the communication is happening, like a 360-degree. Everyone is knowing what is going on in the project. So that's the most important thing.
So how does Fibonacci series play a key role in story point estimation?
How does Fibonacci series
Play a key role in story point estimation?
Fibonacci series, frankly speaking, Richa, I don't know the exact answer for this. Okay, that how Fibonacci series, plays an important role in story point estimation. But possibly, what happens, in if you see in Fibonacci series, what happens is like, it is like 1 plus 1 is equal to 2, 2 plus 1 is equal to 3, 3 plus 2 is equal to 5, something like that, right? So maybe, Fibonacci series, if you apply in a project, that will, if you apply, in the story point estimation, it will tell you, that what is the exact time by when, this particular thing will complete. But I don't know the exact answer. I'm just giving you the answer based on, my, general awareness.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Amit, I'm audible.
Yeah, you're audible. You're audible, Rohit.
Okay. There was some audio issue. Okay, fine.
Yeah. So, guys, the most important thing, like, I think we are already extended 1 hour, but the most important thing is that, like, for you guys who are, learning this full stack, the whole point is like, just practice code, practice doing the coding actually. Don't, try to mug up something. Don't try to kind of like, think that I learn, I can code whenever I'm required. See, the whole point is that you have to just do the coding. So if you have to get into the full stack development, you have to do coding. There is no other way. So start practicing, start writing code, putting, you start using GitHub and all that, and eventually you will see, initially you will find it very tough to write a code. Okay, but as you continue to write it, okay, there you will realize that within no time, within possibly 2-3 weeks, you will become fluent, and so automatically you think, automatically your hand will like start writing the code.
Amit, I have one question. I've
Yeah.
been listening, barring 5-10 minutes where my audio was not working.
Yeah.
Uh, all the students right now are in the first month, so they are kind of warming up and all those things with various information and industry norms. It will be four months from now. From as we talk, it will be 4 months. They are ready with their projects and everything. Okay, and then they are ready for the interview, right? For a full stack developer, maybe, who knows? Maybe for Synclovis, for example, for a lack of words or lack of companies, I'm using the word Synclovis right now. So, for example, my question to you is: a fresher sitting for an interview for a full stack developer in your company, and expecting a salary which is above average than a placement, college placement, right? Typically, college placement is 3 lakhs, and a full stack developer, as per the market, is around 4.5 to 5, as you know, right? So, 3 key points in bullet points: what a fresher engineer must be ready with while interviewing for a product company, a web app, or a mobile app company, from your perspective. 3 key things. See, academics, programming, ability. I think all these points are taken. But suppose you are taking the interview, and irrespective of the college they come out with, right? Whether they come out with NIT or IIT or a, and I think Paras asked the same question with respect to a mindset. I'm just putting it a situation with an interview which is more important. So what's your take on that?
See, I mean, I will simply, like ask you, show me the code.
Okay.
Simply, I mean, I'll ask you, show me your project and show me your code. Okay, and I will possibly put up some kind of like situational code, situational, looking at the code, I'll put some situational question that if I change this, what will happen? Or if this has to happen, then what kind of code you need to write? So 2 things will become clear. If the person has created that project on his own, they will be able to tell me. Okay, if they have copied it from somewhere, they will not be able to tell me. Okay, so there are a lot of times, we have I mean, we generally in Synclovis, what we do is like we simply ask the person to show the code, and one of the developer will sit with them, and like they will do a pair programming and understand what kind of code that person has written. Okay, and if the person doesn't have his own like project or code which they can show, then we will give some of our project and ask them to kind of like debug a problem and find out and tell us what is the root cause of this problem. So I mean, if someone is really kind of like generally what will happen is at a fresher level, possibly this kind of interview may not happen. But believe me, if you have something out there on GitHub or AWS hosted, as I was discussing with you like yesterday, and
Yeah.
if you show the code that I would want you to show my code, and how doing something really different. Okay, uh, that will kind of like definitely land you in a kind of like a better job and a better pay package also.
So I'm very happy to listen from you this. I tell you why, because this just resonates the fact that this is exactly what Pranbir. So Pranbir is the course mentor for this batch, just to let you know, and along with me on other aspects. So this is exactly what we have been talking with the industry, and industry people are saying the same thing. Today, tech interviews are more hands-on. Gone are those days कि आपको कितना आता है, जितना आता है प्रोजेक्ट के थ्रू बताइए, and then we put the situational questions hands-on. You crack it, you get it. You don't crack it, unfortunately, next time. As simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to give you, like, see, one of the main intention when we want to hire people is that we hire, people who are really good. Okay, and with that intention, when we do the interviews, what happens? There are a lot of times there are guys who are very thorough in, all the verbal questions. You ask them any theory, any fundamental, they will have answer. The moment I make them sit on the computer, that's where the reality happens. There are a lot of people, I mean, there are some very senior people in the industry, I have come across who are like at a tech lead and, like that kind of position. And I asked them to write a Fibonacci program, Fibonacci series ka function, they are not able to write it. So, so that's a, so you should know hands-on, you should be hands-on, simple. You should know how to write the code, because that's what company is going to hire you for, and that's what the company is going to pay you for. The better you are at coding, the better you basically, have a chances to land up in a better company and a better job.
I think that's a key takeaway for all of us, Amit, and thank you so much. I think Paras, that answers your question also with respect to the mindset.
Yes,
Mindset, yeah, mindset. One more thing I would like to add is like, be absolutely open. Don't be shy. Don't have any fear. And like don't kind of like have that attitude also कि यार मुझे तो सब आता है, मैं क्यों पूछूं या मैं क्यों किसी को बताऊं. So when you ask, or when you ask, or when you help someone, and when you tell someone, what is happening is that you are building your muscles. You are building your muscles in that particular area. So be egoless. Don't have any ego. Okay, ego side mein rakh ke, just focus on like doing that, doing that work diligently. Yesterday or day before yesterday, I saw that trailer of that Farhan Akhtar's movie that is coming, Tufan. So if you see that trailer, there is one dialogue in that. What is that? Whether you want to become a boxer or whether you want to become a bhai.
yes,
Okay. So you don't have to become a bhai. Okay. You have to become the developer. Okay. So don't be a bhai. Don't show off that, I know. Don't carry that attitude and all that thing. Be humble, down to earth. Take help. Don't hesitate to take help. Ask for help whenever you require. And be always there for people when anyone requires.
yes, sir.
Believe me, if you follow this, I mean, you will, grow leaps and bounds.
Great. I think this could not have been better Saturday for anybody with this last few golden words from Amit. Amit, thank you so much for your time, for your valuable insights to all our students and to me. I also learn a lot every time I have these sessions. And once again, I must say thank you so much for your time. Your presence have been really helpful. I'm sure all of you have learned those few words which are very, very important, and the mindset which is required. Long way to go, but I think with every passing day or every passing month, I'm sure we all will graduate, we all will grow, and that's the whole intent. Thank you, Amit. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rohit, and thank you all the students, all the people who are here. I hope you find some value out of this.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amit.
Thanks.
Thanks all of you. Thanks for all joining in. Thank you. We'll share the video. We'll share the recording of all of this session with Amit sir also, and with all of you. I'm sure you will be able to note down some notes and everything. Thank you all. Thank you. Your participation has been noted. Once again, keep learning, keep skilling. I hope you are enjoying what you are learning. It's been a month now, so the fun has started and the learning has started. We're getting into some serious zone, right? Thank you all. Thank you.
Sir, once again.
Anji.
Sir, you were saying about some application where we have to interact.
Pranbir sir is we are going to use Zoho Click very soon. मेरी तरफ से अटका हुआ है. We have to take one SIM card for that. So last 2-3 days I was not able to get the SIM card. I think next week we are going to start that application. Zoho Click एक ऐसा application है जो Slack की तरह है, लेकिन कुछ companies में Zoho Click in fact 20-30% companies में Zoho Click की तरह applications use होते हैं. So we want you to get exposure to that application also.
Okay, thank you.
And one good news to all of you, good news in the sense encouraging news. So Synclovis, जो sir आए थे अभी, we have a chat. He has shown interest after 5 months. जब आप लोग तैयार हो जाओगे, he has shown interest in seeing the performance of the students every month, and who knows, many of you get a chance to get interviewed by them. Fine. Good. I think इस तरह के sessions are encouraging, right? I hope you got encouraged by it.
Yes.
We are looking forward for a next session. Either that person will be from Microsoft or from Google. We plan to get that person. So give me 1 or 2 days. और वो सब they have been my students way back 6-7 years earlier. So they want to come and interact with you all. मैं थोड़ा वेट कर रहा हूँ Microsoft के लिए because they are hardcore programmers. और आप लोगों की प्रोग्रामिंग शुरू नहीं हुई है. मैं चाहता हूं कि जब आप प्रोग्रामिंग करो और तब जब बात करो तो आप कोरिलेट कर पाओगे. अदरवाइज क्या वो एक तरफ से ही बात सिर्फ रहेगा. जैसे अभी आप लोग अजाइल सीख चुके हो तो अजाइल आपने कुछ सुना, वेब आर्किटेक्चर सुना कुछ, इसी में आपको एक इंटरव्यू का क्वेश्चन भी मिल गया. इन तीनों में क्या डिफरेंस है? इट्स अ कॉमन इंटरव्यू क्वेश्चन. तो मैं चाहता हूं जब आप जो चीज सीखो ना, तब अगर वो लोग आए तो आपको मजा आएगा उनसे बात करने. So अभी Python शुरू हुआ है. I'm just waiting for few more weeks. Once you get into that mode, na, then I can get those people. But anyway, we will have another session within the next 7 to 10 days. So yeah, we're going to have that. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the Saturday. Tomorrow. क्या कह रहे हो दोस्त?
Thank you for today's session. आज बहुत कुछ सीखने को
No
मिला.
problem, Paras. No problem, Paras. No problem, Paras. All for you people. जो committed हैं, जो मेहनत करना चाहते हैं, all for you all. That's what it is. That's what we are doing, and that's personally I am like that. So anybody who wants to get into the mode, career के बारे में अगर सोचना है और वो अगर वो है ना वो मैं तो जीत की जिद, I am a fan of that episode of जीत की जिद. तो it's like you need to have that feeling. करना है और करना है तो फिर आपको पूरा सपोर्ट मिलेगा. ठीक है, चलो, thank you, thanks all.